All right, we made it. Time for the day before the season starts. Power rankings, draft power rankings. So, yeah, last year we ran really long, but I'm by myself this year because nobody wanted to play with me on power rankings. That's all right. I'm still gonna do them. It's fun. So yeah, we're gonna get into this. I've been looking at the board. I've been critiquing everybody's team. So we'll kind of step through things. I did some prep, and you're gonna get like a classic, very classic like Callan spreadsheet that's like mix of art and science. That has a lot of objectivity thrown into it, but there is some math that tries to like make sense of the guesswork that I put in. So last year we kind of stepped through. Scotty and Cayman and I kind of stepped through on a team by team basis. I just wanted to like shake it up this year, so I didn't do it like that. Instead, we're going to kind of look at position groups one at a time, and then use my sort of like subjective rankings of how well we all drafted based on positions, and then try to like normalize things out to get my kind of final power rankings of the year. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into things here. So I'll kind of leave the draft board up here as like a reference, but a lot of this is going to be in spreadsheet format. So I've got all the positions and rankings set up here, and we'll kind of like uncover things just to keep things suspenseful. But start off here with the quarterbacks, and we'll kind of look through how everybody did. And these are going to be in order. Again, I didn't really start with like ranking teams as much as I started with with ranking positions and then like carrying those into team rankings. So we'll get started here and just go top down on what I think the rankings are. So for our quarterbacks, first off, like no surprise, a lot of this is going to be just probably pretty chalk, honestly. We'll look at position groups, like the wide receivers and running backs will be more interesting, but there's really shouldn't be too many surprises here at quarterback. I don't have any like super spicy takes. So basically the higher, ranking that you probably draft off of wherever, you got your draft sheet, should look pretty similar to how I have stuff ranked here, just because like, what the hell do I know compared to these guys? So we won't spend as much time on quarterbacks, but obviously we're going to have our two big guys up here at the top, Josh Allen and Lamar. So Mark and Chris got those two guys in the second. Definitely like bold to take these guys, take quarterbacks in the second round, but these guys are so consistent, and QBs are worth a second round pick most years if they live up to their value. So really nothing too crazy. That's definitely not like going to hurt their team at all by any means. Next up, I kind of, like I said, very chalky, went with Jalen Hurts and then Jaden Daniels. Both those guys were keepers, so good job to Travis and Carl. We've been saying keepers are dumb, but Carl took a gamble on the rookie quarterback. He paid off. Now he gets to see if he can repeat it. He gets him at a good draft slot. Next up is Burrow. So again, still just like basically chalk. 1 through 5. Burrow should be fine this year. Caleb, good job, I guess, taking him. Or keeping him in the 6th, I believe. You took him off of injury, I think, a couple years ago. Took him off injury going into last year because he was injured a couple years ago. But yeah, that's good. Then we got Bo Nix. Again, nothing crazy here. He runs a lot. He's probably going to run a lot again. Then I put Mayfield, Baker on here. He got picked up, homer pick by Andrew. Then we get into so these guys are kind of like, I don't know, everyone expects, gets what they expect out of them. I actually have Mahomes pretty far down here for John, especially taking as a 5th round pick. We'll see. I feel like, Mahomes has not been super great the last couple years fantasy wise. But I do feel like this is a dude who could just like pop off with an MVP season at any point. So this might not be a terrible pick, but I do feel like it's kind of bold to take the guy who's finished more in like the 5 to 10 range the last couple of years in the 5th round for John. So I don't know. I'm a little wary about that pick, but from a fantasy perspective, I think the floor on him is like very, very high, right? He's not going to be too bad barring any injuries. And then the last four, these guys are all kind of thrown into the same pot, in my opinion. Um, you know, Scotty decided to sign up for the Caleb Williams experiment this year. It had very middling results last year. Um, Tron goes ahead and takes both Goff and Murray for some reason. So he does get the spot over me just because really I think like all the dudes that we're looking at here, Williams, Goff, Murray, Purdy, Prescott, you could probably throw a few more waiver, quarterbacks in here too. These guys are all just like, I don't know, like anything could happen, right? I'm not saying these are bad guys to have on your team, but like realistically, we don't know what any of these guys are going to do. So I just went ahead and stuck Tron at the 10 spot here, just because he does have two quarterbacks who are both pretty decent, and one of them is probably going to work, right? So he gets there, and then Logs and I just pull in the, 11 and 12. Dak is coming off an injury. Purdy runs a little bit more, whatever. You're like splitting hairs. There's a good shot like all these guys are going to be dropped, or any of these guys could be dropped within the first couple weeks of the season, and start streaming quarterbacks for these owners. So that's how quarterback kind of shook out this year. Like I said, nothing really crazy. So we'll just like jump ahead. Next, we're going to look at running backs. Let's take a look at these rankings. Let's see if I can get this view centered up here. So the way that I did this, I did something similar for running backs and wide receivers. And basically what I'm trying to do here is like group them together in position groups. I think this is more interesting to look at from a team perspective than like just, ranking the individual players. Because this is like, this is the guys you're going to run out every week. So I'm rating your team based off of like how good your predicted starters are going to be. Doing it this way also lets me like avoid needing to project, how good Will Shipley's going to be this year. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not, but like for a draft, how well did you draft sort of like exercise here? I think this is just like more realistic to what's going to happen in your season, or more predictable, not more realistic, but most teams are not going to hit on a lotto ticket, but somebody will. So it'll be interesting to see who that is. I will also call out when we get to the overall team rankings, some lotto tickets I believe in, and then like a good and a bad, basically, about who drafted, who I thought drafted well and poorly, especially for like these later rounds. So we'll just like run through the top to bottom here, and I'll give my kind of like thoughts on why I ranked the teams like this. So at the top, we do have Travis here. I think he's got the best overall grouping, and I know it's probably going to annoy some people, but I'll kind of like give my opinion on it. So Jahmyr Gibbs, I think everyone can like, there's nothing weird at all about taking him at the number 3 pick. But if we actually look at his stats from last year, he did finish as the RB1, right? So as good as Bijan was for me, as good as Saquon was, Gibbs actually finished number 1 overall in that Lions offense. And I wouldn't be surprised if he did it again, basically. So like, yes, I think Bijan's probably the safer pick of those big 3 that went, but I don't think there's any reason to believe that there's like a huge differentiation with anybody else's number 1 pick, whether that's Bijan or Saquon or even CMC. So that's like already a huge lead. Really, I think the differentiator here is Chase Brown. He's been flying up boards anyway lately. Like he was already kind of like a riser. But I like every day whenever I see like ADP updates, he's just getting like more and more juice from fantasy analysts, like to where he's potentially a top 5, by ADP running back. So yeah, I mean, I'm trusting the experts. I think he's probably going to have a huge year on that Bengals offense. Their defense is going to be shit. He doesn't really have competition anymore. They cut Zach Moss. Joe Burrow is going to, keep that offense humming. So I think this is actually like huge for an RB2, right? Like this guy, if he wasn't a keeper, could realistically be like a, I don't know, mid to late first round pick, early second round. So yeah, just like the value differentiation there is huge. If there's anything to raise your eyebrows at that I could like easily start shoveling people around, it would be the Javonte pick. I don't think he's going to be anything special by any means on that Dallas offense, but he is a starting running back on what is probably going to be a pretty decent, offense as long as Dak is healthy and comes back. So yeah, I don't really think there's any team that is like locked top to bottom, and they're three running backs that I'm kind of calling out here. Basically, like your three most, your top three guys at the position. So we'll look at a couple of the other. We'll look through the other teams here, and you'll kind of see what I mean. But I don't think there's anyone that was like so far and away in their 1, 2, 3 spots better that they knocked off Travis in my mind, I guess. Just with how good these top two guys are, I think is going to be huge for him. Next up is Trond. He took running backs in round 1 and 2, so like no surprise. Saquon, Breece Hall, and then even Tyrone Tracy is like basically an RB2 at this point. But he got him in the 5th round, and he's his running back 3. So I think this is a great pick, actually. Trond pulls in the 2nd spot. Scotty's 3rd. I mean, these are all really solid guys too. You could make a case that Scotty's the top grouping of running backs. Bijan's going to do his thing. I guess that what knocked him down in my mind is, one, James Conner's just another year older. I think he's going to be fine, but it's just like baking in some level of risk. And then Kenneth Walker, I think, is going to be good too, but I do think Zach Charbonnet is at least getting more buzz. So even if Ken still leads the backfield this year, I think he could get ate into a little bit of that workload. Next up, I had Carl. Of course, whoever drafted CMC, it's hard to calibrate that in your rankings. Do you kind of take him at his floor or at his ceiling or try to average him out? I guess this is just where I landed on where CMC should go, especially when considering the rest of his running back crop. So CMC, by himself could almost take Carl to the top of this list for running backs. But then he also has Pollard and Swift, who honestly aren't exciting at all to me. They're boring, but that's kind of what you want. If you want that consistency. So, Pollard finished as an RB2, and I think Swift also finished as an RB2 last year. These guys aren't really anything too special. He did get them in the 3rd and 4th round, and then CMC is just so good that I felt like it probably dragged him up maybe a couple spots, honestly, just based on McCaffrey alone. Assuming he, big assumption, but if he can play a whole season, it's huge. Next, I thought Andrew did a really good job. He went the first 3 rounds, all running backs, and all these guys are going to be major contributors to their team. So I think, what more can you say about Jonathan Taylor, A-Chain? As long as these guys are healthy, I think they're both RB1s, basically, top 10 running backs. And then Pacheco, we'll see how he bounces back, but I think he's going to be fine on that KC offense. So good job to him. Next up, I had myself. Again, I'm kind of in the same boat here as I was just talking about for Carl, having boring running backs. James Cook and Kamara, Cook isn't old, but I felt like he was not as hyped up as some of the top end backs. Kamara is old, but he's still delivering. He's kind of in that James Conner category of boring, but consistent every year. And then Montgomery is a really solid, I think, still flex play type running back. So I knew I didn't want him as my RB2. I didn't believe in him that much, but I did want to keep him as a what I thought was a really solid flex play. Again, these guys aren't the most exciting, but in PPR last year, both James Cook and Kamara finished as top 10 running backs. So, I mean, it almost feels like a bunch of our teams could have multiple top 10 running backs. I mean, you could say that about Bijan and Ken, or Gibbs and Brown, or 2 of Andrews, right? JT and A-Chain. It just feels, but obviously you can't have everybody be top 10. So yeah, I mean, that's why you play the game. But Cook and Kamara, I think, are, right in that slot, kind of a little above average maybe. They should be able to hold down my running game. I'm not too worried about it. K-Mans, this was a hard one to evaluate just because he drafted two of the most hyped rookies. He does have Bucky Irving, solid player. I think he's going to be fine this year, so it kind of like holds him up the board. But again, just kind of like difficult to project how good these guys are going to do. I think Genty's going to be fine. Hampton should be good. We'll see how much Najee even plays. But then even if he does, I think Hampton's probably good enough to carry a bunch of that offense. So, yeah, this is really more about like uncertainty, having K-Man down here at like what? At number 7. So technically below average, but I mean, I feel like K-Man could be up around like the 4th slot at this position group and I could like make that argument. But you know, everyone's got to fall somewhere. And then next we had Caleb. So again, I think Kyron's going to be great. Like he was top 10 last year too. I mean, how many top 10 guys are there? But he was, you know, great RB1. Travion, this one is a little bit scary to me. I feel like he, just like, I guess just like the New England offense, I think he's going to be really good. It's just going to depend on how they split work there and how much improvement does Drake May make this year. Probably he's going to be fine, but you know, we just don't know, right? That's the thing with the rookies. You just don't know. Jaylen Warren ended up being a very smart pick for them. I saw that, for Caleb, I saw that Pittsburgh is still kind of like fleshing out their running back room. So, you know, normally this is like a workhorse sort of like styled, like team, right? Like Tomlin likes to run a workhorse back, but we really don't know if that's going to be Jaylen Warren to start the year or if that's going to be Caleb Johnson. I think grabbing Warren in the 7th was a great pickup by Caleb. So again, just like uncertainty between Henderson and Warren. Kyron's going to kind of keep things on the track, I guess, and then we'll see how these guys affect the rest of it. Now we're getting down towards the bottom. We have Mark coming in next. Aaron Jones is there. I think Aaron Jones is still good, but just like as he ages, I feel like he's going to get less work. He's still going to be like very efficient. But you know, Jordan Mason is there like nipping at his heels, and you know, we'll have to see. They're going to have a new quarterback too. Jones is a good pass catcher, but we don't really know what JJ McCarthy is going to do as a quarterback. So yeah, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. I think Hubbard's going to be fine. He's squarely in that like boring running back camp, you know, like the ones I have and Carl. So I think no worries there really. I think really what started knocking Mark down, other than just like maybe a slight concern on Jones and his usage, is the Nick Chubb pick. I think from a football perspective, I wouldn't say I'm excited about Chubb, but I don't think he's going to like hold the Texans offense back by any means. But I don't think he's going to like elevate either. And I don't think they're going to turn him into a workhorse and give him 25 touches a game. Like, you know, hopefully for Mark, he's good enough to just like kind of throw into the flex spot on a week-to-week basis. But like, just, I don't know. I'm not inspired from a fantasy perspective that he's going to be like a game changer. So yeah, we'll just have to see. And a lot of that's going to depend on like goal line usage and all that fun crap that's hard to predict. Then we have John. John could be even farther down the board, which sounds insane, with a team that drafted Derrick Henry. And he's really probably the only reason that John isn't last. But then John went on this crazy run of Mahomes and all these receivers, and like waited until the 8th round to pick his RB2, and who's not even a starter on his team. And then the only other running back he took was also not a starter on his team. So John only has one starting running back. He could probably try to flip one of these receivers for a decent running back. But yeah, for now, I can't see these three these three running backs combining for any like crazy numbers, I guess. Not enough to make like John's strength of his team the running game, basically. But like Derrick Henry on your team is always, it's almost like a free 20 points every week. And he's been super durable. So next was Crams. So Josh Jacobs was a workhorse last year. I think they're probably going to use him the same way. Where did he end up finishing last year? So he was number 6. I mean, yeah, this wouldn't even surprise me. I guess this is almost like there's a reason that I put him below John, is that Josh Jacobs is probably not as good as Derrick Henry, and then Chris also took basically nothing but backups, right? Like Brian Robinson might not. We'll see how much he even touches the ball, barring like Christian McCaffrey injury. Charbonnet is like one of those like, oh, he's coming for Ken Walker, but really, even if he steals workload from Ken Walker and devalues him, is that going to make Charbs like fantasy relevant if they're both healthy? I don't know. I just outside of Josh Jacobs, I'm just like not super enthused by this running game on Chris's team. So he pulls up the 11th spot, and then lastly, we got Logs, and he's kind of like got the worst of all worlds, honestly. There's a reason I ranked him last, I guess. He's got the uncertainty of a rookie on an offense that hasn't really, at least in the last year or two, like held up some like elite level run game anyway. And he's also competing with J.K. Dobbins, who I think is still technically listed ahead of him in the Denver depth chart. So we'll see how it works out. I don't know. I mean, R.J. Harvey was great in college, but like to be your RB1 is a little bit scary, basically, especially when he could have taken like a Jones or a Pacheco. Logs went with the rookie. Maybe he turns into a phenom. So I could be totally wrong, but this is just kind of how I feel now. And then Etienne and Kroski, Bill down here. Maybe they're fine. I don't know. I've still never been a huge fan of Etienne. I think he did get injured last year for a little bit, but maybe he's better this year. I don't even know how much the run game will be a focus in Jacksonville with the pass catchers they have, right, between BTJ and their new shiny toy, Travis Hunter. So this was my rankings of running backs. If you don't like it, I don't know, get over it. These are my power rankings. Next, we'll go ahead and jump to the receivers. Tight ends and defenses should be a little boring, so I feel like I'm stretching this out a bit, but I'm only at the 20-minute mark. That's not too bad. All right. So what we're going to see here, like unsurprisingly, and I'll kind of like show this in a summed up view after I get through the position rankings, is that there's going to be like a little bit of a flip. If you're high in one, in the running backs, you're probably going to be lower in the receivers, right? That shouldn't really be a surprise, right? Every pick is opportunity cost, and you're kind of like deciding, do you want to be a run heavy team or a receiver heavy team as far as your like fantasy players go. But let's focus on receivers for now. I think Caleb did not have great running backs, but that's because he focused so heavily on these receivers. I think Lamb and JSN are probably the best, duo that anybody really has at this point. These guys are both, again, like top 10. CD, I think, finished number 1 last year. JSN was also top 10. And then if you are a Caleb truther, DJ Moore, like he's already good as a player, but if you think that Caleb is gonna like progress even more, then DJ Moore is like a huge get right here as well. So yeah, I was really impressed by this wide receiver core. Obviously, put him at number 1 here, and there's just really like no weak spot. Another thing that we're going to see here, kind of like with the running backs, is someone might have 2 top 10 options, but like the third option is usually pretty weak or uncertain. But I feel like DJ Moore is like, of the teams that have these elite wide receivers, DJ Moore is kind of like the best wide receiver 3, in my opinion. So that's why Caleb gets the top spot. Because then we could look at even just Logs up next here. I think this is, again, like a really solid core here from Logan. So, he obviously goes Nico and London, Browns 1 and 2. Made his run game pretty shitty, but Nico and London are both, again, top 10 potential guys. So that's pretty incredible. And then Devontae, I guess that's why he gets knocked down below Caleb. Devontae, I think, has still got it. Like, I still think he's a great athlete. He is sharing space, obviously, now with Puka. He's playing in a new offense. Matthew Stafford's arm might fall off. There's just like a few questions that, like, again, I'm not even really questioning Adams as a player other than he's a year older. But it's really like the situation and the players around him that make me question like Adams more than Moore, I guess, as a wide receiver 3 for a team. So Logs gets the 2 spot. Next we have Mark. I can kind of just repeat everything I just said about Logan for Mark. Puka and St. Brown here are, again, like top 10 receiver contenders. And then Calvin Ridley has been playing well, obviously the last couple of years in Tennessee. But he's kind of got the, again, like questions at the talent around him, rookie quarterback. Their team doesn't have a super high win total, but does that mean they're throw the ball more? Like it's, you just don't know for sure. I think Puka and Amon-Ra are going to like hold it down for this team. I'm not worried about them scoring points at the wide receiver position, but if Ridley can go for like 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns and kind of like push himself into borderline wide receiver 1 territory, this might be like an elite group of guys here. Then for myself, I put myself next year. I definitely think the receivers is the strength of my team, and I almost feel like if this was someone else's team, I could have pushed them higher, but I didn't want to get too crazy, and obviously it's my draft, so I'm very high on the players I picked because that's why I picked them. But we'll have to see how it shakes out. I think Neighbors is going to be incredible. He was fantastic last year. Obviously, they have a new quarterback in New York, and we'll see how that kind of like translates and if he'll get the same volume he got last year. I think he's also still dealing with injuries in the preseason, so we'll kind of like see how that affects things. I'm expecting basically a like replay year from Brian Thomas Jr. I know Travis Hunter is in Jacksonville now, but I don't anticipate that like majorly cutting into BTJ's productivity. I just think there wasn't enough change to that offense to make me think that they're going to like significantly move away from him. When you have a good player, you throw him the ball. So I guess the reason that I knocked myself down, because I think both of these guys have like top 5 potential, right? I think they might have both been, other than, Neighbors kind of got injured and he still finished wide receiver 6. These guys both have like top 5 wide receiver potential. But McMillan, I honestly don't know that much about him. He was fun to watch at Arizona. All the fantasy analysts said go draft him, so I said okay. I went and drafted him. Hopefully he's good. Hopefully Bryce Young can throw it like he was at the end of last year. But we'll just have to kind of see how it goes. Next up, I had Crams. Where's your team? Yeah, so a bunch of these guys are like not that exciting to me, but they put up points last year, and they're probably going to be fine this year, I guess, is what I would say. McLaurin is like he's going to be good. He hasn't really been great in the NFL until last year, right? I think I dogged on him quite a bit actually last year, as like a borderline, like maybe a wide receiver 2, and that was like correct. I mean, he hasn't been especially great, but then he gets Jaden Daniels on his team, and all of a sudden he's like threatening to sit out and demanding new contract money. So really, this is more of like a Jaden Daniels. Can he repeat? Because I think McLaurin is good enough to kind of like do what he did again, but it's really more about like can Jaden replicate that rookie year success? Kind of similar, Cortland Sutton. I would say he's he's very solid too, of course, but he's got to get that same performance out of Bo Nix. So a lot of trust getting thrown into second-year quarterbacks. We'll see how it plays off. And then McConkey, second-year receiver. How did he finish last year? Sleeper's not even going to load. But I think he'll be... he was top 15. I didn't realize he was that high. So, like solid team here. I think the upside is a little more limited than some of these other names, right? Neighbors, Thomas, Puka, Nico, CD. Like, these guys are not in that tier by any means, but they're all just like pretty solid. And as long as their quarterbacks stay healthy, I think this is going to be just fine. Next up, I'm probably going to have Scotty pissed at me for this one because I have him down here as basically like an average receiving core, and maybe I'm just like shitting on him a little too hard now that I'm looking at it, but I really don't. I'm not convinced that I am. JJ is gonna, again, contend for like wide receiver one, right? Like he's still the GOAT. He's still probably the best receiver in the league. He's incredible. I think he's quarterback proof. I don't even think like having JJ is gonna make a difference. He's just that good. Really though, it's these other two guys that drug Scotty way down the board on this position group for me. I do not think Zay Flowers is even worthy of like a 5th round pick. I know that was like his ADP, and he's like barely a wide receiver too. I think I'm not even saying he's not talented. It's just like the fact that he plays for the Baltimore offense. And so, he's Scotty's de facto wide receiver too. And even with Lamar playing like MVP level seasons, he's not even in the top 24 wide receivers on a year-to-year basis the last couple years. So, I'm just not inspired, right? You've got like a flex player, borderline wide receiver 2, filling out your wide receiver 2 slot. It's fine. It's not like a disaster, but it's average. There's a reason Scotty's kind of like in the middle here. And then really Matthew Golden, again, we don't know if he's going to be good. He's a rookie. It's kind of up in the air. Maybe he's incredible. I do think Jordan Love is a great quarterback to have throwing to your fantasy receivers. But that's like a loaded, or a crowded wide receiver room in Green Bay. So we're just going to have to see like how they use him. How does he slot in? It's just like uncertainty more than anything. So you have one, S tier elite option in JJ, a pretty like mids, wide receiver 2, and then like an unknown quantity at wide receiver 3. So I don't think it's like insulting to put Scotty here, kind of like in the middle of the pack, but it's kind of where I landed on it. Then we have Andrew. I had him next. So T. Higgins is going to be great. Just got his new contract. Burrow's going to throw 1 million balls to him. Good for him. Kind of the same with Devontae. Both these guys are kind of second options on their offenses, of course. So, again, I don't think that these guys are like top 5 contenders, but they're not going to be, outside of the top 15 or 20 either. So these guys are going to provide a great baseline. I mean, Andrew waited until the 4th round to even draft a wide receiver. So, he's definitely going to lean on this run game up here. These dudes are going to be fine. I think, holding him, if you don't even draft a receiver in the first 3 rounds and you can have an average receiving core, I think you're doing just fine as far as fantasy football goes. And then I even really like Jacoby Myers down here in the 8th slot. Nothing fancy, but I mean, he had like a great year last year. Like all things considered, right? He is just like a bona fide wide receiver 2, in terms of fantasy. So if he can get a couple like top 15 performances and a top 20 performance, like that's more than enough to let the rest of this roster between Baker and the tight end and the running back sort of like carry him into a good spot. So hopefully that's not too insulting. Then we're going to repeat what I said about Scotty here for Carl, and what he did at receiver. So again, he's got Jamar here, elite S tier option, obviously like contending for a wide receiver 1 finish. But Igbuka, maybe I'm just not as high on Igbuka as some other people are. I do think he's great, and I think he might even have a hot start to the season. With we're waiting on Godwin to come back. McMillan is out with like a concussion or whatever. I think even Cade Otton is banged up at tight end. So I think Igbuka is going to have he might have a great start to the year. But just, rookie wide receiver, never know what you're going to get. And then at some point, both McMillan and Godwin are going to come back. There's just a lot of potential for things to like not extend throughout the whole season. But if he comes out and he's like a star and he like even overtakes Mike at the, as like the lead receiver in terms of like talent and productivity, this could like, who knows? He could end up being a great pick. I do think he's very talented. It's just like, can he fit in that offense and be productive with everybody else there, basically, is what gives me kind of like a little bit of pause. Keon Coleman, really just like any, he didn't do well last year, right? 500 yards, I guess, like low end wide receiver 3. I don't know if Josh Allen has made any receiver like a yearly threat since Stephon Diggs, right? And I just don't know if Keon Coleman's going to be that guy that like suddenly, is catching 80 yards and a touchdown every week, right? To like put him into the wide receiver 2 conversation. So not bad, but like nothing crazy. I think Carl's receiver is just going to be fine. He also went very running back heavy, obviously, so there's only so much draft capital to spend on the rest of his wide receivers. Next up, we got John. He also went wide receiver heavy, but I'm a little concerned about these guys too, even though he did put a lot of draft stock into the position. AJ Brown, I mean, I think he's going to be okay, right? He didn't do incredibly well last year, a little bit of a drop off. Tyreek, I'll say I went into this season fading Tyreek. I think if Tua can stay healthy, he will do better than, the 18th finish he had last year. But I think the days of like Tyreek competing for even like top 5 finishes are kind of behind us. This is just my hot take on it. I was not going to draft him until probably like the 5th round, and there was no way he was going to last that long. So I mean, he'll still be productive, but I don't even know if he's a wide receiver to own in Miami anymore, honestly. So yeah, this is maybe just my personal bias on Tyreek maybe not being the dude. And then Worthy, I do think Worthy is the best receiver in the Chiefs locker room now. He was really more of I felt like he was more of a gadget guy last year. They used him really well, right? They had like a cool offense, like always in KC, but he was never treated as like a dominant wide receiver 1, like the guys at the top of this list, right? Like he's a wide receiver 1 on their roster, but he, again, since Tyreek and in KC, they haven't had like a dominant wide receiver for fantasy purposes. And I just don't see Worthy as like breaking that trend, being the guy to break that trend. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be okay. I don't even know if he'll get to 1,000 yards though, right? So we'll see how it goes. But for now, I got John sitting kind of like a little below average here. Then we got Travis up next. So he's got Mike, who's a year older. I don't think he's washed yet. I think they're going to force feed him balls and get him to break this 1,000-yard record, right, for another season. I think he'll be fine. I don't, even his days of like threatening as a top 10 receiver though for fantasy are kind of like waning, right? He didn't get there last year, although he was injured for a few games, so he could have been closer to that on a per game basis. Basically, I think he's going to be typical Mike Evans, like Mr. Consistent, but not enough, unless he just has like some crazy touchdown numbers where he's putting up, like 14 plus touchdowns. I just don't think he's going to get the that kind of like elite level of volume. Then he had Pickens and Odunze. Pickens, I don't know. I feel like he's going to be frustrating to own, honestly. I feel like he's like that every year, where some weeks he's going to do great and other weeks he's going to suck, or he's just not going to get the ball. And I feel like that's going to kind of be the same in Dallas. Like I'm just not expecting some like huge uptick, especially with CD still there, like commanding targets. So I'm probably just a little lower on Pickens than most people. But yeah, that's where I had him. And then I had Rome Odunze on my team last year. I don't know. Maybe he's going to be better this year, but I was just like, I think he was even on my championship roster. But I was just like, whatever, not impressed. Caleb, I wouldn't call myself a Caleb truther. And then DJ Moore is there to take targets. They've got a couple good tight ends. There's just like a lot of mouths to feed. They just drafted Luther Burden. There's just like a lot going against Rome, in my opinion. I do think he's good, but I don't think he's the best receiver on his team. There's a lot of other guys who are going to get the ball. Is Caleb even going to be good this year? There's just so many open questions that I'm not willing to say he's like going to suddenly pop up into the top 20. But, I could be wrong. That's just where I'm at today. Then we got K-Man, DK in Pittsburgh. I feel like, I don't know. This is kind of whatever to me too, honestly. I do think maybe he'll have a better year just with, Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball than he's had the last year or two. But I'm not convinced that he's going to compete for like a top 10 spot either. And you kind of need that from your wide receiver one. And we just saw the stats. He's kind of like mid-tier wide receiver two in my mind, right? So yeah, maybe he's good. Maybe Aaron Rodgers, gets him the ball a lot. Maybe he kind of like elevates his game. I do think he's like a great receiver, but is that offense and that quarterback in that situation gonna like suddenly revive him into being a top 10 player, like player at that position anyway? We'll just have to wait and see. I don't know. I'm not low on him, but I'm not particularly high on him either. And then the next two, Garrett Wilson and Olave. Wilson's probably like the best, I think, from a talent perspective. He was top 10 with Aaron Rodgers playing, throwing him the ball last year. So maybe he can like maintain that level of performance. We'll just have to wait and see. And then Olave, I even think Olave is pretty good. The worst part about Olave is his quarterback, right? He's gonna have Spencer Rattler throwing to him. Maybe if they like force feed him the ball as a receiver and they don't launch bombs to Rashid Shaheed, Carl will like be very sad about it. But maybe Olave can pick up the slack. This is another guy I was not super high. Like I was fading him coming into the draft. I just don't think he's going to be the one to like carry a team in their receiving core. And then lastly, I had Trond, who is last place on my, wide receiver rankings, but he was, way up there in my my running back rankings. So hopefully it's not too mean of me. He was high up there. But Marvin Harrison, I don't know. I didn't see anything last year that like made me super excited and got me like pumped for this year. I'm sure he's going to do better just from like a talent regression standpoint. Like he's too good to only have like 800 yards and 8 touchdowns. It wasn't even a particularly bad season, but as a wide receiver one, I need more certainty than what Marvin Harrison is going to give me. Not super high on that. J-Mo, he had a kind of a breakout last year. And breakout as a wide receiver too, I guess. So 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Again, he's not even the top option on his team either. And then Travis Hunter, I think this is why Tron got last. It's probably just my bias of being a BTJ owner. But, is Travis Hunter, like, how is he going to get involved in that offense? How much is T-Law going to target him? We just don't know. I'm high on him as, like, a talent and as a player. But especially if they start, like, I don't know, putting him back to receive catches or like receive punts and kickoffs, or if he ends up like shining at cornerback and they start pulling him into more defensive packages, like, is he going to get tired trying to play two ways? Is he going to be able to last the whole season playing two ways? There's just so much uncertainty around him and the offense and the usage and competing with, BTJ and whoever else is on that team. He's not horrific, but just like between the three of these guys, I don't think any of them are like top 10 threats at the position. But we'll have to see how it goes for them, I guess. But yeah, Tron pulls up the rear. Let's knock out the tight ends, and I did rank defenses. I'll go through those quick because who gives a shit, and any prediction is like useless for defenses anyway. The tight ends are basically just chalk, really, if we talk about. So Trond with Bowers, Travis McBride. I think these are more or less the order that these guys were drafted in, other than the keeper side of things. Kittle, Laporta, Hawkinson. I think this is just like literally their ADPs. Kelsey, Kraft, Njoku, Ingram, Warren, and Loveland. Yeah, Mark might be a little. Obviously, we're disagreeing on this. Maybe this is, since he didn't get Caleb, maybe this is his like Caleb truth, his pride like shining through for Colson Loveland. There's already that crowded wide receiver room with Moore and Luther Burden and all those guys right in Chicago, and they've got now two decent tight end. Like Cole Kmet, I think, is already a pretty decent tight end just to compete with, and now you're a rookie tight end coming in, and I think we saw Brock Bowers last year as a rookie tight end do some pretty incredible stuff, but like that does not happen, and we saw Laporta the year before that. So I don't know, unless there's something like actually like fundamentally shifting at the position after seeing that for a couple years. If those occurrences were like outliers in the tight end rookie sort of like expectations, then I'm not ready to crown Colston Loveland as the next Brock Bowers or Sam Laporta. So I think he might be the one that's farthest down my list. And I guess you could kind of say the same thing for Ty Warren here. I think I put him one above just because he has less competition. And I think Danny Dimes is going to target him a bit more for the Colts. So, and then I'll just pop this open. This is, again, basically the chalk list of defenses. I took the Broncos early because I stream defenses every year, and I just want to see what it's like to maybe have a good defense. I might drop these guys by week 3. Who knows? Nobody was jumping off the draft board, and I was like, if I can lock up a position and not have to think about it, that's what I'm going to do. So went with the Broncos. Then, basically just chalk all the way down. Eagles, Vikings, like these teams are all good. These last 4 teams are all terrible. So I think my guess here, I haven't looked at all their schedules. Carl, Travis, Logs, and Chris basically just probably went and looked at like who has the easy early season matchup, right? I think the Cardinals do have a very early season matchup. I don't know if it's like the Raiders or the Saints or something. I feel like I might have seen that on some fantasy advice column. But these guys are probably all just like automatically in the streaming tier, but defenses are so wild that it's kind of hard to even try and judge things. So let's go ahead and reveal the overall rankings. So that was kind of the per position group. So I'll click over and reveal the team rankings and then show off a little math on how I got there. We're at about 45 minutes. So here is the team rankings. We're doing the big reveal, and then I'll kind of talk through some other nerdy number stuff that I looked at. So I had Travis at number 1, Scotty, Caleb, myself, Carl, Andrew, Mark, Trond, Logan, Chris, Matt, and John. So these numbers are based on the position rankings that I just talked through for the last 40 minutes. But I didn't. Those were pretty much like just vibe-based rankings. But I did do some math after vibing those rankings out. So let's see how I got there, because again, I've got to show my work, right? So what we're going to look at here, these are the same 2 charts. The kind of like big old colored blocks you're seeing. So it's like the same thing here posted twice. The rankings here are basically the ranks that I had in the previous sheet. So like I had Scotty with the 3rd best running back core, Travis was 1st, John was 10th. So that's what these numbers are representing, is just like basically your placement of that position group. Among all the owners. And then what I did here, I'll talk through who I thought my best and worst picks are in a second. And then what I did here was basically do some general math to say, one, I did do some tiering for quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses. I didn't do tiering for the wide receivers and running backs because I figured just the raw numbers that I gave on these two columns is incorporating three different players together, and you can't assign one tier for all of them, and maybe I'm just like, by considering multiple players, I'm sort of like building in sort of a tiering ranking inherently. I don't know. It makes sense in my head, but who knows if it's accurate. But really the reason for the tiering, and a lot of fantasy sites do this, so I guess I just kind of like followed the crowd here, is that if I just look at like the difference between, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, let's say, right, or something like that, for quarterbacks, really, like if you just go off like a linear scale, right, you're saying that 1 through 12 is like an evenly spaced amount of value chopped up into 12 equal parts. And that's really not how these rankings are going to fall out. And a lot of fantasy sites rank players this way, so it really shouldn't be anything surprising. But basically it's like, what are the groupings of players that are more likely to hit a certain level of success? So we can see here that I have Mark, Carl, Chris, and Travis all with the tier 1 QB. Basically, these are the 4 top quarterbacks that I talked about. And I think any of those 4 could end up as the QB1, right? Whereas if I rank them literally 1 through 4, then I would be saying that, Josh Allen is like, 3/12 better or something than Jaden Daniels, who I think I had as the 4th quarterback. And I just don't think that's correct. I think it's more reasonable to say any 4 of those guys could finish top. So let's just kind of like all consider them at an equal value, right? We're chunking guys out. So we can kind of see here, I don't know, pause the video if you want, and see where I have 3 quarterback tiers, 4 tight end tiers with I don't know, maybe I just fucking hate Colson Loveland. I had him as a 4th. And then 3 defensive tiers. So those are kind of like, again, chunked out to kind of like flatten the differentiation among the players at those position groups. Just to kind of like, I think it's more likely that you'll predict a tier rather than predicting an exact placement. So this is kind of building that in. So that's what we're seeing here. Then down here we have positional weights. This is basically my projection of how important a specific group is at predicting fantasy success. There is a little bit more math behind this that's taking into account like real actual numbers on how important a certain position group is. So like wide receiver or running backs are the most important, followed by wide receivers, quarterbacks, tight end. Like this is nothing new. The scaling is not exactly right here. I do have more accurate numbers, but this was like kind of a compromise I made between how important a position group is. Like you need good running backs to have a very successful fantasy team, but also like the predictability. Like defenses are technically worth more than 5% of your team success, let's say, right? Like on average. Tight ends are worth a bit more than 10%. But these are also much harder to predict, so I knocked percentage points off of that. So there is a little bit of like vibes-based stuff going on with these positional weights, but they are kind of like grounded in reality, let's say. So now if we take these numbers together, this is what I was saying, like the Callan art and science of a spreadsheet. We've got our rankings, we've got our tiering. I tried to do like a weighted average of these tiers. And if we look at my very simple little calculation here, what I'm basically doing is taking like a rough approximation of how important these things are. It looks like I didn't even update these I think I was playing around with the weights, but more or less going to be the same. The same resulting outcome, I guess, where I'm attributing, based on your ranking of wide receivers and running backs, I'm assigning, a weighted percentage here of your team's theoretical total, like scoring for the season, and multiplying those numbers together. So it's going to be like 33% of your team's success is going to come from whatever the ranking is of your running back room, right? So if you have really good running backs, that's the highest ranked percentage. That should be like the biggest impact on your team. And we can see that the number 1 and the number 3 teams are up here. Based on that. And that kind of just like trickles down, right? So 33% weighted to the running backs, 29% weighted to the receivers, and then falling off for quarterbacks, tight ends, and defenses. And then I just did a very basic, sorted out here. And we can see that it basically shakes out to kind of what you would expect, where if there's a lot of green and not a lot of red, that means your team is good. So at least for the rankings that I put together, Scotty has a high-end running back room, a pretty average wide receiver room, a great tight end, he picked up a good defense, and maybe he just has to hope for the best at quarterback, right? This is a pretty good fantasy setup. Travis is right there sort of with him. A little bit weaker at wide receiver, I had him, but he did have a fantastic running back room, the number 1 ranked, and then a great tight end, a great quarterback, and then who gives a shit on defense, right? Like he'll do what he has to do there. So these numbers are all going to kind of shake out, and this is basically how these weighted averages kind of came out. You can even take a look at these and see how close did I, just based on this methodology, how close were you, right? So we've even got a couple ties, Andrew and Carl, even Scotty and Travis, who I had as 1 and 2. Really, that should be more of a tie. And we can see how far these numbers fall off. Again, this is all just obviously based on my rankings. So that's kind of how we got to the big numbers up here. The last thing I did, I just thought this would be fun as well. I'll drag this back over so we can take a look. I wanted to see who did I think had the best and worst pick at each, in everybody's draft. So we'll kind of step through everyone's draft, and I'll kind of make my justification on who I thought was good and who I thought was bad before. I've just been talking for an hour at this point, but that's my job now, is just to fucking talk all day. So first, I did try to not consider keepers, just because obviously their value is going to be, that's boring, right? Their value is implied just in the fact that they're keepers. And I did try to identify obviously your best players in the first round. That's not really what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the best return on value. But I'm going to go against that immediately. I thought Scotty's best pick was Bijan. To be honest, nobody here really jumped out. He didn't make any huge swings that I was he didn't make any huge swings, and nobody stuck out as oh my God, I can't believe he got him. Basically, just taking Bijan 1 overall is I feel like it's setting a floor for your fantasy team for the year. I feel like there's really only 2 teams that even might finish with the number 1 running back and number 1 receiver. Scotty is one of those teams. He's got Bijan, who easily could finish RB1. Justin Jefferson easily could be wide receiver 1. So I think not getting cute, not trying to take CMC, not trying to, I'm going to go CeeDee Lamb and have the best receiver core and then suck at, running back. I thought that was a very astute, in my conservative mind, a very good pickup to basically just take what you're given, right? Don't get too cute with it. His worst pick I think I touched on this when we were talking through rankings. I don't think Zay Flowers is even worth a 5th, especially as your wide receiver 2. I think that's going to be annoying to manage all year. Especially because I also don't think Cooper Kupp is going to jump into that wide receiver 2 spot. Jawan Jennings, we'll see what he's even if he can play. He might just need to hope for the best with Matthew Golden and then fill in flex. I don't know. I wasn't a fan of this pick at all, especially at the 5th round. Zay Flowers just doesn't play for an offense that's conducive to a really strong wide receiver 2 for fantasy purposes. Next up with Trond, I thought Tyrone Tracy in the 5th was a great pickup. He is he's his running back 3, and I think he didn't even have that running back room to start the year last year, and he had to work into it, and he still finished as a borderline running back 2. I think with owning that backfield now, he basically got maybe a top 25, potentially top 20 running back in the 5th round, and I don't think, again, other than the keepers, I don't think anyone's going to come close to that, if I'm being honest. So yeah, I thought that was a great pickup by him in the fifth. His dumbest pick was Goff. Goff's not bad, but basically you're going to be. He picked two quarterbacks for some reason. I don't know why. If you're going to take Kyler in the 13th, you would have been better off, taking one of these other position players, right? Like take Jordan Addison, take like a lotto ticket. Yeah, Jared Goff is probably not good enough to justify, like even taking him in the ninth by himself is probably, not egregious, but like you're taking him kind of like at a bit of a, you're like hopeful, but then to circle back and take another quarterback, I'm probably just salty about it. But like there was just no reason to do that. You kind of just like burned a draft spot on like a prayer essentially. Next up, Travis. I really liked the Darnell Mooney pick. I think he's a little bit hurt right now, but I think he could have a really great year in Atlanta, and especially getting him way down here in the 11th, I thought was a fantastic value. Like I would not be surprised if he finished as a RB or as a wide receiver 2 this year. At the very least, I think like a flex position coming out of the 11th round, having like a solid flex guy like this is huge. So, yeah, I thought that was great. On the flip side, I am not a believer in Josh Downs. I feel like he's been, he got some attention the last couple years, hasn't done absolutely anything with it. Maybe Daniel Jones helps him out now that he doesn't have AR-15 throwing to him. I just wasn't, I don't know, for whatever reason, not super high on this. But, between Christian Kirk and between Darnell Mooney, I'm not really worried about his wide receiver core. So I don't think this was like a super valuable pick, but especially like in the 8th round when there's probably still some value on the board. But yeah, it is what it is. Next up, we had Caleb. I gave him Jaylen Warren as his best pick. So we got him all the way in the 7th. And I know that Warren fell to the 7th because everyone thinks that Caleb Johnson's going to take over in Pittsburgh. And that might be true. But I think Jaylen Warren was announced as, he got that contract extension. I don't know, was that right before the draft or right after we drafted? And he's still listed as the RB1 on their team. And if he does get kind of like first run on that Pittsburgh offense that Tomlin calls or is a part of anyway, unless like who knows really, right? Everyone's hyped about rookie running backs, but we really don't know what that offense is going to do. So there is like a somewhat of a possibility that Caleb picked up a RB1 in the 7th round, and that's just like pretty rare, right? To get a starting running back in past the 6th round. So I thought that was a sharp pickup. We'll see if it pays off. Maybe Caleb Johnson immediately comes out of the gate and dominates, but who knows? Worst pick was another running back, Mixon. I love Joe Mixon. He was incredible for the Texans last year. It really just comes down to the fact that he's on PUP. So the Texans have our bye week 6. He's going to miss the first 4 games. I'm expecting, and even Sleeper is expecting this, it looks like, they're just going to hold him out the first 5 weeks, and then hopefully he'll be back week 7. So this isn't a talent thing as much as it's you took a running back in the 10th that's not going to play for essentially half of the regular fantasy season, and he's going to clog up a roster spot for you the whole time. And then even when he does come back, he's still going to be, like, if he is good when he comes back, who knows? He's still going to be competing with Nick Chubb. He's still going to be competing with Woody Marks. The Texans still are not a run-first offense. Yeah, I just thought I, as a Texans fan, I was even kind of like fading Joe Mixon, and I just didn't think it was great. Then we have John. So his good pick was Judy. This is kind of the same thing that I was just saying. Who was I just bragging on? I think like Warren here. Underrated. He had a great year last year. I mean, he was a wide receiver 1. He finished as a wide receiver 1. He's probably going to have, Flacco still can like spin the ball. And he got Judy in the 7th round, who was a wide receiver 1 last year. I thought this was a great pick. Even Waddle, I think, might be the own in Miami. Like these two picks, I think are great. There's talk of Jordan Mason taking over that backfield in the Vikings, right? Yeah, just like a solid. I know I have John down pretty low on my power rankings, but like a solid mid draft run here from John. The downside is he did take Mahomes. Again, I don't think Mahomes is going to be bad by any means, but I think taking a fifth round pick on a guy who, I mean, I hate to say it, is probably more worthy of like an eighth round in my opinion, or a ninth round pick, just based on the fact that he doesn't run and his yardage has been down and he's not airing the ball out as much. It's more about the draft, the opportunity cost of what he could have gotten the fifth versus what Mahomes is going to give him. But now that I say that, Mahomes is probably going to, like fuck around and win an MVP. So who knows? Then for Carl, I had DeAndre Swift. I do not actually like DeAndre Swift very much as a runner. I don't think he's great on the from a talent perspective. I think he proved that in Philly, and he hasn't been anything too special in Chicago. But he is very consistent, and this is kind of what you want for a wide receiver or for running back 3. He's almost guaranteed to finish like just middle of the pack running back 2 fantasy wise, right in that like 20 spot. No one's really competing with him for touches at this point. I think he's just going to like be a boring plod along running back 2, which doesn't get me excited, but for a 4th round pick for your 3rd running back, that's pretty great to get in the 4th round. I thought this was a very, very solid pick. Even like I'm not excited about him as a player, but I think as a fantasy value option, I thought that was great. Then his worst pick I thought was Keon Coleman. Again, I think I just touched on this when I was going through the wide receiver ranks. Rough as a wide receiver 3 in my opinion. Don't even know how involved he's going to be on this offense this year. You got Khalil Shakir, you got Josh Palmer. You got, Dalton Kincaid still there. I don't even know who I would have taken, I guess. Christian Kirk, maybe. Like, it seems like there should be other options at this point in the draft, but kind of is what it is. I just am not a big believer in him as like a long-term wide receiver 3 for this team. All right, and then my team, I thought Jordan Addison was a great pickup. I touched on this last year, and I guess it worked out. Fantasy is a game about winning weeks, not about most points at the end of a season. Obviously, those two will correlate, but like 80% of an elite option is better than 100% of a totally mids player, because that's not going to win you weeks, and that's what fantasy is all about. So while Addison is going to be suspended, he's not injured. So like, from that perspective, it's like I'm not really worried about it. He's going to miss 3 weeks. It kind of is what it is, but then I'm going to get to ride him, bounce on this boy the rest of the season, and he's going to deliver me. I mean, he's kind of like that Swift, right? He's right around. He's like just a solid wide receiver 2 that I got down here in the 9th round, and if he does pop off, right, then that's like a potential 6th round keeper option. Whereas I feel like if he wasn't suspended, he probably would have been like a 6th round pick this year. Like I just think it does have the possibility of being a good pickup. Obviously, I just said it's my best pick. My worst pick, I don't know. I put Keenan Allen on here. Obviously, it's hard to like pick what you want. I think I could have said Ricky Parasol. Well, it's just like an unknown quantity. Keenan Allen, he's probably totally washed. We'll see how it goes in week 1. I could absolutely see myself dropping the guy, but yeah, I could have, instead of taking like an old washed player, I probably should have just taken like a Woody Marks or a one of these like rookie nobodies basically, or even like taking Kyler Murray that I wanted at that spot, but I didn't think Tron would would snipe him with his already having a quarterback. So there's that, and then let's keep it going here. K-Man, Garrett Wilson in the 4th. I thought that was a great pick. I just talked about him a little bit too. Um, Top 10 type wide receiver, as long as the quarterback there can get him the ball. Top 10 receiver in the fourth round is pretty great. And then, yeah, I thought his worst pick was Samson down here in the 10th. I'm actually pretty excited about Judkins. I think he's just like, once he gets through all of his, like, assuming he doesn't get a season-long suspension, I think that was, they drafted him in the second round for a reason. So the reason I think that, I don't even really know how good Samson's going to be as a football player, but he's going to start the year competing with Jerome Ford for snaps. And then once Judkins is back, he's competing now with Judkins as well, who, they took him in the second. They're going to want to get him some run. Like, I'm not seeing a lot of clear paths towards Samson being like a dominant player that's going to be even like a week in, week out flex tier guy. So I was pretty happy whenever K-Man drafted him right before me, because I knew I was targeting Judkins in this round. And K-Man kind of didn't snipe him right before me. So I didn't think that was a useful pick, but he did, he went down and got Ford. So our trust in the Browns offense is maybe a little misplaced anyway. All right. And then for Logan, I had Stephon Diggs in the 8th. If you believe the New England hype on Drake May, he is going to be very good. We'll see if that happens. His numbers are honestly not that great, but every analyst seems to be super high on the kid. So, and Stephon Diggs has been good everywhere he's ever gone when he's healthy. Getting him in the 8th round, I felt like was a great pick. His worst pick, I think he fell into the Bill hype. I don't even know if Krosky he's not even listed as a starter. Again, rookie. We just don't know if he's going to be good. I just didn't. I guess there wasn't anybody that I thought was a horrendous pick on this team. Adam Thielen is I think he's pretty washed. I think Scattaboo is going to run behind Tracy. Like, nobody's horrific on here. Even Bill, you might as well take a lotto ticket, but a lotto ticket in the 7th round is a pretty high price, in my opinion. Okay. And then for Crams, Sutton, kind of like the same thing as I was just saying about Garrett Wilson. Getting Sutton in the 4th round, I feel like is a solid pickup. I'll say that. Really, Chris's worst pick was probably Brian Robinson in the 7th, in my opinion. Barring, unless CMC gets hurt, I just don't see them really switching to a committee in San Francisco. So I feel like this was kind of a burned spot. But I ended up actually calling out Rashee Rice as the worst pick for like several reasons. I do feel for Chris. I think he kept him as a keeper before they announced he would start the season, unable to play, basically. He's suspended for 6 games. So I do feel bad about that. But that means Rashee Rice is, he got injured last year. Chris wrote him, kept him the whole time. He could have dropped him early and, traded, for a different, traded for like a rookie or something. But no, he's stuck with this guy. And then he keeps him, right? He burns a 5th-round pick on him. And then he gets suspended, right? He's burning a season of a roster spot on a guy who's not even touching the field. He's just like draining value out of this roster for Crams. So almost not even Chris's fault. He is a good player, but a terrible pick this year, unfortunately. Last couple here, we've got Mark. I thought Ollie Gordon here in the 12th it could end up being a really good pick for him. A-Chain is obviously the lead back, but I feel like that they're not going to run him 20 times a game. He's dealing with his constant own injury issues that he's always fighting through. I feel like Ollie Gordon, he was not very good at OK State last year, even though he started the year as like a Heisman hopeful. I think he's better than what we saw last year at OK State. I don't think he's the best rookie running back by any means, but like I very much see a path to him being a contributor to a team. Especially, Jalen Wright is injured, I believe. A-Chain, I think that he might have some load management. So there's like a chance that Mark drafted like a 1B starter for a team in the 12th round. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously a bit of speculation, but that's just looking at his team. I thought that was kind of like the best potential value to pick, round ratio. And then his worst pick, who did I say? Oh, Aaron Jones. Yeah, I think, I don't think he's bad by any means. I think he's also going to get a little bit of that load management. He's dropped from like a top 10 play to like a top 15, top 20 play. Again, another year older. Uncertainty with their new quarterback. He's got Jordan Mason nipping at his heels. I think he was pretty much drafted at ADP. I think this really says more about my thought that Mark didn't really have like a horrendous pick than it says anything about Aaron Jones. I am a, Aaron Jones stand for life, so I'm not shit talking my boy. But yeah, I just don't see like excess value here, I guess is my thinking, right? I don't see Jones like suddenly becoming a top 5 running back at this point in his career. So not that bad, all things considered. In terms of bad draft picks. And then we'll wrap it up with Andrew. Top pick was, I think I called this out in the position groups as well. Jacoby Myers, underrated guy, underrated asset, solid wide receiver 2. He's getting him down here in the 8th round. I think this is like the best wide receiver 3 on the board for any team really, or at least like close up there, and he's getting him way the heck down this list. So yeah, like solid late round pickup for Jacoby Myers. Godwin, I think this is kind of the same thing that I was just saying about Joe Mixon, I think. Whoever I was just talking about, where like injury is just going to keep him out the whole year. We don't know when he's going to come back. What's he going to look like after he comes back? How involved is he going to be? All the things I said about Igbuka, and like, how long is that hype going to last? You could almost say the same thing about Chris Godwin, right? Like he's going to have to compete with Igbuka and McMillan too, right? And is he going to bounce back from his injury? And when is he even going to come back, right? You could be holding this guy the whole season, potentially, and maybe he doesn't even play. You could almost say that about Najee Harris too, his 9th round pick. So yeah, great 8th round pick. I'm a little more like hesitant on the 9th and 10th round out of Carlo, just because like these old dudes that are hurt, and we just don't know that much about them. So those were my good and bad for each of the teams, I guess. All right, I got to wrap this up. I've been talking way too long, but here are your official commissioner power rankings for the 2025 season. Good luck, boys. Let's get it.